Imagine a world cloaked in shadows. The air is thick with the stench of decay, and every street corner whispers of death. The year is 1348, and the Black Death has descended upon Europe like a relentless storm, leaving bodies in its wake and cities in ruin. A single flea bite was enough to condemn a soul, and for every city wall that tried to keep the plague at bay, 1,000 rats scuttled through the darkness, bearing death on their backs. This plague did not discriminate. Kings and peasants alike fell victim. Entire families vanished behind locked doors, leaving only silence and the scurrying of rats to mark their passing. Some towns lost half their population within months. In places like Siena, the death was so overwhelming that even grave diggers deserted their posts. In this age of superstition and desperation, a figure emerges, a figure that would come to haunt the nightmares of generations: the plague doctor. They arrive in silence, clad in long, waxed cloaks, wide-brimmed hats, and gloves, their entire bodies covered to avoid contact with a deadly miasma. Most striking of all is the mask, a monstrous beak filled with herbs and spices, a desperate attempt to hold back the invisible killer that no one truly understands. That beaked mask was not just a curiosity, it was a desperate innovation, a fragile shield against a world that had become unrecognizable. The herbs inside, like lavender, rosemary, and cloves, were believed to purify the air. Some doctors even stuffed the beak with camphor or vinegar-soaked sponges to battle the bad air. But who were these doctors behind the mask? Were they healers, charlatans, or something altogether more mysterious? Long before microscopes and modern medicine, the world was ruled by superstition and fear. People believed the plague was carried on the air itself, a poisonous miasma that seeped through the streets like a silent assassin. Cities desperate to protect their people hired plague doctors, men who claimed to understand the sickness, but often had little more than courage and a willingness to step into the darkness. These doctors were sometimes trained physicians, but just as often, they were barber surgeons, apothecaries, or even opportunists hoping to profit from the panic. Contracts varied. Some cities paid a flat salary, while others promised hazard pay or even bonuses for each body they documented. In Venice and Milan, doctors sometimes received special legal protections and were forbidden from leaving the city until the plague had passed, a grim guarantee that they would share in the same fate as those they treated. To wear the mask was to step between life and death. The mask's long beak was believed to filter the poisonous air, while the glass eyepieces shielded the doctor's gaze from infected vapors. Many doctors carried a staff to maintain distance from patients, a practice that would later inspire the term social distancing. Imagine seeing that figure in the mist, a silhouette with lifeless, glass eyes and a hollow stare, the very embodiment of the plague itself. Yet their job was as grim as it was necessary. They examined the sick, lanced the swollen buboes that marked the infection, applied foul-smelling poultices of onions, garlic, and sometimes crushed emeralds, remedies so rare and expensive that it bankrupted some families. Bloodletting was common, with the belief that draining bad blood could heal the afflicted. Some even burned sweet-smelling woods and herbs to cleanse the air. In some cities, plague doctors became so feared that people believed they brought the disease rather than healed it. Some doctors were accused of being spies, hired by enemy cities to spread death deliberately. Tales spread of doctors accepting bribes to smuggle the sick out of quarantine. But beyond the treatments lay the most chilling reality: their notebooks. These plague doctors were often required to keep meticulous records of the dead. Names, ages, addresses, a grim catalog of loss that filled ledger after ledger. These records, now preserved in archives across Europe, stand as stark reminders of a time when death was counted by the hour. In Florence, chroniclers wrote of bodies stacked in carts like cordwood, carried to mass graves that overflowed. In Avignon, Pope Clement VI consecrated the entire Rhine River so that bodies thrown into it would receive a Christian burial, a desperate measure for desperate times. And in the midst of that darkness, the plague doctor moved like a shadow among shadows. Some believed their presence at a bedside was a sign that hope had already fled. Yet even as some cursed their arrival, others saw them as the last line of defense against a world unraveling. Some contracts forbade plague doctors from socializing, lest they spread the disease. Others included stipulations that if the doctor fled the city before the outbreak ended, all payments would be forfeited. Did they fear the disease, or had they become numb to it? Did they wonder if they would be next? One can imagine them in the darkness of their chambers, by the light of flickering candles, staring into their own reflection, seeing not a healer, but a silent witness to humanity's greatest suffering. Over time, the beaked mask became legend, a symbol, woven into the tapestries of fear and fascination. In Venice, it became a carnival disguise, a reminder of the fragility of life and the thin veil between health and sickness. The beak itself became a symbol of survival and of the shadows that cling to us all. And so, the plague doctor stands at the crossroads of history and myth, part healer, part harbinger, part grim reminder of a world in chaos. When the plague finally receded, the mask remained etched into our collective memory, a symbol of a darkness that once threatened to consume the world. So the next time you see that long-beaked mask, remember the men who wore it, some brave, some foolish, all of them human. They faced the darkness with whatever tools they had, carrying with them the weight of the dying world. And in their story, we find our own a reminder that even in the darkest times, there is always someone willing to stand between us and the shadows. Subscribe for more, because the past holds many secrets yet to be revealed.